Hello. In this video, we're going to program some basic methods. We're going to program a method which does not return anything, and we're going to program a method which does return something. Now, really important to point out here, the methods I'm programming are really pointless in the grand scheme of things. You wouldn't actually use methods for the purposes I'm showing in this video. We really want to just understand what a method is and how it functions. A new programming term you're going to see. Oh, pardon me. The new programming term is return. This is called a return statement. And actually, let me change this font right now because it should be Courier. New. There you go. Return is what's called a reserved word in Java, which is used to stop a method and spit out a result. There's lots of little subtleties that are important to observe when using return statements, and we'll have a little video that goes through the different type of common errors that you can encounter. But three things I want to say now. Any code after return is ignored. It will cause an error and needs to be removed. So as soon as you have a return statement, the program stops running that method. So if there's code directly after it, it will never be accessed and therefore results in an error. A method that returns a value must have an accessible return call. So if your method is designed to return something, the word return must be in there somewhere. And any return calls which are inaccessible will cause an error. So your method can have more than one return call, but we need to use if statements to be sure that they're all accessible. You can't have one return statement followed by another one because that second one will be inaccessible. All right, enough talking. Let's go program. So I have this class called method example 1, and I have my main method which you might start to recognize some new things about it. So we see that it's a class method. It returns nothing because the word void is there. The name is main. The parameters are string with square brackets after it, which we might not know what that means yet. What it means is that it's an array of strings. We haven't studied arrays yet. And the name is args. So you might have recognized now that you can call this whatever you want. We could call this monkey. We could call this food, good. We could call this food. This is the name of the parameter that can be accessed in the main method. So we're going to write two methods. The first method, method 1. The first method will simply print out a menu. Really simple example. Okay? So I'm going to call this method, the method will be called print menu. So notice, it has a descriptive name which is really important. The first word is a lowercase and the second word is an uppercase. And actually, why don't I take this and let's actually cut this and we'll put this after my main. There we go. So let's write this method. So let's go through the questions. 1, is this going to return anything? And the answer is no. This method will return nothing. And because it just simply prints out the menu. The second thing, does this method need anything? This method does not need any parameters. Because to print the menu, I don't need to know anything about the menu. I just need to print it out. So let's write our header. Public static, because it's an instance method. Sorry, pardon me, it's a class method or static method. And now it doesn't return anything, so the return type is void, meaning nothing. And now I write the word print menu. And now it has no parameters, so I don't put anything in the brackets. Then I open my brace and I close my brace. This is the end of the method. And I'm a really big believer in commenting your ending brace because a lot of your errors will be due to excessive or not enough braces. So it's really helpful when you have bigger programs. So let's say my menu is just going to be system.out.println, menu, whatever it might be. Let's copy this, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to say A is fish and chips. B is going to be, I don't know, hamburger. C is going to be peas and rice. Whatever. That's my menu. So now, watch, if I run this program, nothing happens. And the reason is because what it does is it goes to the main method and there's nothing in the main method. So if I want this method to be invoked or called, I just simply have to write the name. So I'm going to say print menu. So what the computer now does is when it sees the word print menu, it's going to stop and it's going to jump down to this method, execute the code, and when it gets to the end, it's going to stop and then jump back up to here and continue on. So if I run this now, there's my menu. But if I write print menu again, and I run it again, it prints it twice because it's going to print it once with the first call, and then it's going to come back to here and then call it a second time. So what you might start to see now is that methods are actually really useful if we have to use the same code over and over again. So what it does is it means that I don't have to write out the menu every time. I can simply write it in a method and invoke that method. And look, it prints out the menu a whole bunch of times. Okay, so there's a method that doesn't return anything. Now we want to write a second method in this class, and we can write as many methods as we want in a class. So method 2, this is what this one is going to do. This method will find the sum of two numbers. Now again, completely pointless method because we know we can just say number 1 plus number 2. But we want to get the end, we want to appreciate what a method we want to appreciate a method that returns something. So again, let's ask ourselves, this method will return, let's say it's going to return an integer. So that's the return type. And we're going to say this method will take two integers. And those two integers, we're going to add them together. Okay, so now let's write the method header. So we're going to say public static, and the return type is an int. And now the question is, what's a name that makes sense? And a name that makes sense could be find sum, and it's going to take two parameters, a and b. So you'll notice right now that I have an error here. And what that error is saying is this method must return a result of type int. Notice I'm saying to the program that it has to spit out an integer, but nowhere have I indicated in here. So if I put here return 9, again, it's not going to give me the sum of a and b, but now it works because what it knows is that as soon as it hits this line of code, it's going to stop and spit out 9. So if I go up to my main now and I do this, let's make an integer called x, and we're going to invoke the method find sum, and we're going to give it the arguments 1 and 2. So what this program is going to do is it's going to invoke the method find sum and take 1 and pass it into a. It's going to take 2 and pass it into b, and then it's going to run this method. So it's going to come down here and it's going to work through the code, and it's basically just going to spit out 9. So that 9 is going to end up here, and that 9 we put into x. So if I go system.out.println x and I run this, I get 9. All right, completely useless. I agree. So what we actually want this method to do is we want to add a and b. So I can create a variable in here called int sum is a plus b, and then I can return the sum. So now this method allows me to very quickly find the sum of the two arguments that are passed in there. Sorry, the two parameters that are taken. So let's make it 6 and 22. And I run this, and there it is. So again, a really nice thing about this is I can call this method as many times as I want. That's the beauty of methods. Methods can be used repeatedly, meaning that it's easier for someone to read the code, and the code is shorter because you can write large chunks of code that are repeatedly used in one section and just call that. So let's run this again. Whoop. Find sum. So it's going to invoke find sum with 6 and 22, print it out. It's going to invoke find sum with 1100 and negative 123 and print out the answer. So let's just make this method a little bit tighter in terms of code. A return statement works just like an assignment statement in that it's always going to evaluate what it's returning before it returns it. So I can actually put right here a plus b. So let's just really briefly address some of these errors that we have. If I put another return statement here, let's go a plus b again, I get an error. And this error here is specifically saying, hey, you have a return statement that is inaccessible because this method is going to always hit this return statement, and then if it hits this return statement, it's then going to go down and it's not going to reach this one. So one thing that we sometimes do is we can put things inside of if statements. So I say if a is equivalent to b, we'll return a plus b, else we'll return a plus b. Again, completely useless, but this is used to illustrate a point. Sometimes coming up with really useless examples help illustrate ideas. And the idea here is that we have, yes, more than one return statement, but each of them is accessible, meaning that it's either going to go to this return statement or this return statement. If I, for example, put return a plus b here, I'm going to get an error now. And the error is because the program might not do this one, but if it fails to meet this condition, it will always do this, meaning this statement will never be reached. Again, one of the early mistakes or the early challenges that students have when they're writing methods is dealing with return statements. So it's something to be very conscious of as you work through and develop new ideas. I hope this video helped.